Okay.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to What's Your Point Overtime. Holly, you ready?
I guess.
Okay. We're all happy that Holly's up and walking around. She had a near catastrophic skiing accident, which threatened the quality of our show because she was beat up and couldn't come in.
Yes.
And anyway,
well, it didn't threaten because we were still virtual. So
it happened right as we're making the transition to coming into the studio. Hey, I want to go back and flesh out a little bit of what's going on in Austin right now. Holly, Charles, we watch all session, from January to the end of May, and they are working like their tails off trying to get bills through. And now some of these bills are being vetoed for leverage and to send message, and that just seems incredibly counterproductive to me. But it's not a new phenomenon, but they're killing bills with a veto pen.
But I don't know. Holly can speak on this, but I think that the governor doesn't guide the legislative process during session, and this is his opportunity to say that this is what I want or wanted. This is one of the priorities I laid out. What you guys delivered to me was not it. Well, I didn't really deliver, but what you guys are trying to deliver is not it, and this is what I want. And so, in Texas, we have a relatively weak governor, especially when you compare them to the lieutenant governor. And so, this is his opportunity to really set it forward. And he hasn't hit his veto limit. I think it was one session ago or 2 sessions ago he vetoed more, but he is doing it more purposeful this time. And I think even 2 days ago, we started seeing a transition to vetoes that then reference school choice and saying that, you can bring this back after school choice. So he's going to keep using, well, I guess today's the deadline, so because he can't keep using it. But I think this is his way of kind of exercising that power. I don't know how long one can go as governor hearing that they don't actually run the state. It's really the lieutenant governor. They don't have power. So I would probably start to do the same. I probably would have did the same 8 years ago.
It's just, according to your watch, 8:05. He's got several hours to go to reach that
and
limit.
The budget hasn't been signed yet.
Bill, you've seen your fair share of power plays. Is that what's going on here?
Yeah, it seems to be very personal between Patrick and the governor, and Phelan to some extent, although he's really kind of on the side of this. This is kind of a feud that's been brewing for a long time between the two of them. It's finally sort of broken out, and it's hard to see what the end game is for either one of them to me. I don't think Patrick's going to try to run against Abbott. I'm not sure Abbott will run again. It's hard to imagine how this ends up playing out. I would think that the folks in the business community are just got to be like screaming at both of them to stop acting like children, because this is really hurting the state.
Holly, you look at this situation, and on top of the leader of the Republican Party being indicted criminally, and you've got an impeached attorney general. You look back to November, they were kicking everybody's tail by double figures and had absolute control of Texas. And now you throw $35 billion, whatever it is, surplus, and they can't figure out how to share it with property tax relief, and everything's breaking down. This does not look good.
It doesn't look good, but what you're seeing here within the party, it is exposing cracks in the different policy approaches, right? There is an important debate to be had about how you manage the surplus. What does effective tax relief look like? What does school reform look like? And so, you are having a very robust debate. And as Charles pointed out, the governor doesn't have a lot of power during the session. He can set those priority issues. But, this is where the governor really exerts power over what happens. And I don't think he's going to back down. We could be looking at special session after special session. We know there will be more special sessions, but my prediction is the governor will continue to call a single issue special session until they come to some kind of compromise on this issue.
All right, Sergio, when your opponent is distracted and on his heels, that's the time where you should be making some progress. Maybe, hey, if we tack to the middle a little bit, be more pragmatic, maybe we could get some more voters. I don't see Democrats in Texas doing that. In fact, I haven't even met Colin Allred, their Senate, one of the Senate candidates. Hasn't even come to Houston yet. What do you do? What do you do during this period? I mean, other than laughing and have a little Schadenfreude for inter-Republican
you
warfare.
have to, you know, what they're doing is let the smoke clear before we strike. That's what they're doing
the
right
plan.
now. Let the smoke clear before we strike.
That's right.
But that's what's happening. You know, this is pretty unique. I think, you know, as we all know, lots of money makes people act differently. So people act differently when there's a surplus of money, you know, and then we start seeing all sorts of jockeying and positioning for the piece of the pie. So in order to benefit their political agenda, whether it's future president or whatever. But, you know, when you have a super majority for 25 years, almost 30 years in Austin, you start noticing these cracks within their own party. And it's starting to happen in Harris County Commissioner's Court. When you have a super majority, they start, you know, that infighting starts to surface. What's that?
Tell us more about that.
Yeah. It's on the news every week. And so that's what's happening in Austin, and it's long overdue. And you're starting to see these folks now go after each other. When you're controlling the majority, you have a monopoly on the state legislature. So what are we going to do now? Well, now we're going to fight you and I, because I want that piece of the property.
That's right.
I want Boardwalk, and you have Park
That's
Place.
right. That's right. That's
okay.
right.
So that's what's happening.
Hey, how serious is the rift between Commissioner Garcia and County Judge Hidalgo?
You know, I think it's starting to.
Do tell.
Get the popcorn ready. Get the popcorn ready.
It's effing serious.
Can't say that.
You know, I texted Commissioner Garcia on that issue, and he goes like this. Like no comment.
Perplexed
Yes,
at
right.
that last meeting when Lena was going after him twice in the meeting. The second time, dropping the F-bomb
And by the way, it was also directed at Briones too. Not to miss that, because she also voted against Hidalgo on that DA fund.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
And that, you know, when you're talking about it at the state and the cracks in the armor, that's been coming up for a minute, but the Republicans always rallied together, because notice they kept making sure that they would change the threshold of how many votes you had to make sure they still make their cut. You know, they kept saying, okay, well, we got 5 of them won, so make it 5 less that we need. Okay, but you said this is the problem, and this is why we are here. Money, 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 money. They have never had this amount of money to be over to make decisions with ever, okay? And everybody want to make sure that they get as much and as many bites at the apple as they can. Now, I, as a Democrat, had no idea the power struggle between the lieutenant governor and the governor. I did not. Now it is palpable. I don't have to be in Austin. You can taste it in Houston that this is the real deal Holyfield. And he's, while he's not signing some bills, there were some pretty stupid ones that had come up, and I hope the hell he don't sign them either, because they were beyond stupid. I mean, beyond stupid. So hopefully he won't sign those. But the big thing, the fact that the lieutenant governor lends Paxton money, okay? He's supposed to be the person making the rules. I know there's something about conflict of interest, because, you know, if you owe me $175,000, I don't want your butt to be broke. So I may not, you know, make the rules so you can get out of it. That's a big concern of mine, that this was allowed to happen. And this, all Texans should be looking at this. What is this about? Because y'all, as I said a week ago, they only went after Paxton because he asked for $3.2 million of that pie. Mm-hmm. He asked for that. Can you help pay my bill for me, so I don't got to touch my money?
And I believe, the request was for taxpayers to cover that, which is not uncommon, but without providing details about why the settlement was entered into. And so that sort of launched that investigation where, the members of the House said, we need to find out what's going on here. So,
yeah, because I want to write that note.
A lot of, and I'm not taking sides on this. I'm just looking at the facts.
You doing good on that fence line? You doing good. You doing real good on that fence line.
I'm going to get hate mail as soon as the show's over. But, the thing is, they were, questioning, why are we entering into a $3.3 million settlement with these whistleblowers who were working in the AG's office, and what is really going on here? What are the allegations on the table? So it wasn't a last minute, all of a sudden we're going to impeach Paxton. I think there was a serious look at it, and it's interesting to me to see the political frenzy that's happening, where you have someone the likes of Representative Briscoe Cain being accused of being a secret Democrat and persecuting Ken Paxton. That's just very odd.
You know that people help drowning people and they grab for whatever they can. When they said that about Briscoe Cain, I said that's somebody else too drunk to even talk about. Don't even talk to them. Briscoe Cain ain't never been a Democrat, ain't gonna be a Democrat, don't drink Democrat, do Democrat. So the fact that you had that come up, but I'm glad to hear you say that they were looking at him. But see, my problem is they've been looking at him for 6 years. They just not went after his ass when he asked for that money.
Well, you have to let it go through the courts.
Yeah, and to that point, though, and the General Investigating Committee did just get more authority kind of ahead of this, not for this specific investigation, well, I guess allegedly not for this specific investigation, but leading up to this, they got more authority, and they were looking into it because of the question. But before we move on to the prop text, I just want to put a button on it. I don't think that this is as bad as it is made out to seem. I think we're just getting a glimpse under the curtain of what happens all the time, because we now have Twitter and people like to just get on Twitter and start going back and forth. But I think we're in a good place. The fact that they're arguing about how much property tax relief to give rather than should we or should we not, I think is a good thing. And then the other thing to Garcia, I do want to give credit to Commissioner Garcia, because for him to sit there when she did that, and he didn't even flinch. He just sat there. And I would have said something.
Well, he's a seasoned politician.
Exactly.
So
For
him to just sit there.
Now, he did. There was some body language.
It was. I'm going to say.
But for him, and she's done this a couple of times now, for him to kind of just sit there and take it on the nose and move forward, I give him a lot of credit for that. And I give even more credit to Commissioner Ramsey for coming back and saying that he's owed an apology to the person who brought a resolution against him before that.
Well, back to the original, there is a rift, and it became obvious when there was the swearing-in ceremony.
That's right. And he
at
said,
the NRG.
That's right.
When Lena said
one of my colleagues didn't want me here, but it ain't Rodney. That's what she said in the Chronicle, but it wasn't Rodney. And I said, but it ain't Ramsey, because he ain't your colleague.
But we know that Rodney, there is a rift, but Rodney is the shot caller. Okay. Don't get.
I want to address this to Bill.
That's an interesting way to put it.
The rules are going to be established this week for the impeachment trial in the Senate. Would Dan Patrick be well advised to bring in, say, State Supreme Court Justice Nathan Hecht to kind of ride herd on the process and allow him? He's not a lawyer. Would that add some gravitas, maybe some cover for the Lieutenant Governor?
I'm going to say, here's what, I'm going to make a prediction about what I think is going to happen. Okay.
No.
I think that, first of all, I think the Senate would like to not have to deal with this at all. I mean, there's just no win coming out of this for those guys any way you look at it. If they vote for impeachment, a bunch of the base is going to be mad. If they don't vote for impeachment, it looks bad because the facts are so bad. So this issue has been raised about whether or not you can indict somebody before they were elected. And the question, almost all this conduct occurred before the last election, but after he was first elected. And so the question is, well, before elected, is that before you were ever elected or before you were last elected? And it turns out the Supreme Court's looked at this issue on several different occasions. And there's two kinds of impeachments in Texas. And by the way, if Tom Glass is watching, he's a lawyer that schooled me on all this week. So this was not original Bill King thought. There's statutory impeachments, which the courts have control over. And the Supreme Court has said, they've applied what's called the forgiveness rule. If you did something terrible in your first term, but you got reelected, the voters forgave you for it, and so you can't be impeached on it. This is a constitutional impeachment. The Senate has the absolute final authority. It's not reviewable by the court. Whatever the Senate says is what's going to happen, and they can establish their own rules. They could decide to follow the Supreme Court precedent that it has to be conduct that occurred after the last election, in which case they say, look, regardless of whether these facts are true or not, you can't, Supreme Court said you can't do this, And so we're just going to dismiss the impeachment and never reach the merits of the case.
Really?
That's what I think is going to happen.
Well, you know what? Let that happen. That would be great for that to happen, because the hypocritical people who want to sit up here and condemn every crooked thing they see in Harris County better shut the hell up. If they do that, shut the hell up, because it doesn't matter what Bill said. That's not relevant to this scenario. The Supreme Court did it in their case, but they don't have to do that here. But it don't give them no out. It don't give them no cover. It don't give them crap. Because when you see somebody rob somebody's house, but you say, oh God, they did it right before we finished moving everything in, so we're going to let that go? No, I'm telling you, it won't.
Big development this week.
Okay.
Kind of in the weeds, the original criminal charges against Ken Paxton, an appeals court ruling that it was a big venue fight, whether it should be in Collin County, where General Paxton is a longtime lawmaker and fairly popular still, even though the Collin County delegation voted for impeachment in the House. That venue has been established as Houston, Texas, Harris County, and a much different jury pool. Bill, I know you looked at the merits. I know you've at least read about the merits of that case. The financial fraud, securities fraud case that he had to disclose that he was being paid to drum up investors, and he didn't do it. Thoughts here, Bill?
It's a violation. It's a pretty technical violation. I think that's why there hasn't been a lot of outrage about it. I could see him getting convicted and getting a probation or a fine or something like that in that case. I don't think it's a real mover. The conduct in the impeachment is much, much more serious than that case is. What I don't understand, if what those young men who were the whistleblowers said is true, I cannot understand why the feds haven't indicted both of them on it. And when they indicted, what's his name, Nate Paul, when they indicted him on these financial crimes the other day, his lawyer, Dan Cogdell, came out and said, they're just trying to squeeze my client to get him to cooperate against Paxton. And that makes perfect sense to me. I just don't know why it's taking them so long. But, the feds have moved like molasses. It's unbelievable.
So Dan Cogdell, wait a minute, hold on. Dan Cogdell is the lawyer. Don't y'all know where we know that name from? Y'all don't remember at Windsor Village Church, him getting up on the stage saying that Kirby John Caldwell wasn't never going to be indicted. Don't y'all remember that? I think Orange is the New Black for Kirby John right now. And he was the lawyer for the Clubs.
I don't go to that church. I go to Sacred Heart.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, I don't think he came to y'all, but I was like, wait a minute. And he was the Clubs attorney. The Clubs were the largest private school in almost Texas. He was their lawyer. I think they both, Miss Clover, you remember Miss Clover? They both are doing time, and they didn't think they were, because he was 80 and she was 78.
That's the one from
and Orange is the New Black.
That guy. Okay. Charles. My sense of it is that a lot of Republican members are, they've gone to the bomb shelter. They're going to wait till the bombardment is over and then come out. They're not going to engage.
Members of the Senate or the House?
House.
Well, interestingly, I mean, a lot of them have been owning it. I was actually talking to State Representative Lacey Hall, and she's been at like 3 events this past weekend. She keeps getting hit with the question, and she doubles down and talks about why she felt that what she read and the things that she saw moved her to do it. And interestingly enough, I mean, the Harris County delegation's, somewhat split. You've got like Valerie Swanson and others who voted against it. You have Lacey Hall and Frisco Kane and others who voted for it. And so many of them have been trying to go out and explain it, because you're not getting away from it. I mean, whether if you hide now and come out 8 months from now, they're still going to be asking you those questions. And so I think a lot of them have kind of leaned into it and just tried to explain their position. I do think that whatever happens in the Senate is going to play a big role in what happens for those House members and how much they have to kind of fight any grassroots pushback from that. If the Senate goes forward with the trial and convicts or impeaches, it gives them some cover. If they don't, then it's a little tougher. And there was still the comments from Trump saying that he was going to challenge every single person. He's going to have a lot of things on his hands apparently these next couple of years, but he's going to challenge every single person who voted for it. So yeah, it's interesting. And to your point about Collin County, the entire delegation did vote for it, and then the Collin County GOP Executive Committee voted to condemn the impeachment. In the SRAC, the State Republican Executive Committee voted 52 to, I think, 11 to condemn the impeachment yesterday. And so a lot of the clubs are in opposition to it.
See, I want to be in on one of the editorial meetings at the Texan because the publisher is actually a former state senator, correct? What can you share? Come on.
That's her job. Leave her alone. She just stopped lipping.
We've had
Leave
some
her
very
alone.
interesting conversations. Our goal is to try to provide the facts and the information and not tell you how to think about it. So all our stories are very fact-based, timeline-based, and we're looking at the evidence and all of that. But to your point, the House members have already taken their votes, so they do have to be out there and talking about why they voted the way they did. And I think the names of the people who voted for impeachment, when you put all of that together, you're kind of saying, well, this is probably worth trying and looking into. Now, on the Senate side, it's in their best interest to be completely silent at this point until we have, facts and evidence, and to your point earlier, I do think, bringing in someone from the state Supreme Court, trying to make this as legally sound as possible, regardless of the outcome, as to Bill's point, they could lean on that Supreme Court decision previously. But they need to be very careful because, you don't want this to come across as a politicized trial.
Yep.
You want it to be, very proper, very straightforward. I think there's a lot of questions about what Angela Paxton is going to do. Is she going to recuse herself? And a lot of people think she should.
I'm not sure she can legally recuse herself.
That's the question, right?
Because there's a state constitutional provision that says all senators must attend the trial. I guess
So
she can attend, but she don't have to vote, especially when he was
Let's
having
get
an
on the-
affair.
That was one of the
Yeah, he was having an affair on
Can
her.
she be present, not voting?
Yes.
She can probably abstain.
She
from
can
voting.
abstain.
They make them. They're making the rules.
They can't make
right?
them
Hey,
vote.
it's such-
brass tacks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If Dan Patrick, I think, controls 9 votes, 9 Republican votes in the Senate, and if he's decided that Paxton, and it survives the first wave of challenges, if he decides that Paxton needs to be out of office, I think it's a done deal.
Well, I think that's right. And I understand that Patrick does not like Paxton personally.
What do you lend him money for?
But I don't
Don't
know.
lend money to people I like.
But
It's a
I
high
don't know what
interest rate.
I think Patrick will be more driven by what the fallout for his members will be in Republican primaries, would be his political consideration. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think he's going to get impeached. I really don't.
Rodney Ellis gave a bunch of money to Lena Hidalgo.
Yeah, they friends.
Yeah.
Who lends money to enemies or people you don't like? You don't even live them a stick of gum.
Well, political strategy.
Only the mafia. But anyway.
There you go. That's right.
Hey, tell us a little bit about the dynamic with our new county commissioner, Leslie Briones, who comes in. We think she's a rookie, and she's being pretty savvy and positioning herself to where you can almost see, and we're talking about Harris County Commissioner's Court, y'all, in certain cases, an alliance between Ramsey, Garcia, and Briones. And that is a truly interesting dynamic. Thoughts?
Oh, well, she was our keynote speaker last month at our LULAC, Greater Houston LULAC breakfast, and we're very impressed with her maturity, her experience as a judge, to be able to look at both sides and assess the situation and make a judgment. She brings all of that experience, and of course, her pedigree in terms of her academic achievements, and she's just an exceptional woman. I think she's looking at it in a very smart way, in a very political way. And I think by looking at the situation, she's not reacting on impulse. And she's a very smart woman, very impressive. I think those alliances are going to continue.
I expect that from
a lot
her.
more control
Yes.
than
She does.
Hidalgo does.
She had a job.
Absolutely. Or not only control, maturity.
But she had a job before Lena. Lena's job before that, I believe, was at a coffee shop or something like that. Where Leslie Briones has a lot of life.
She was an interpreter.
Yeah, okay, that's right. You want cream or sugar? That's right. But anyway, Leslie was way
Spanish,
more
but anyway.
mature
Yeah.
and had worked a job as a judge and all that.
Yeah.
In addition to that, what you said, what she's doing is smart.
Yeah.
Because that was Kagle's seat. There are a lot of Republicans in that district, so she wants to absolutely make it that she's looking out for everybody, so they won't be, getting the bed ready at their shoulder to come at her hard. Because it had not been for the how can I call it, gerrymandering that occurred, she wouldn't have won that seat.
That's
right.
right.
So no, she want to make sure that she makes sure. Hey, look, don't look at her and say that's me, because you don't know that. And I agree with her. I don't like people to look at one black person and say all black people like that. So I agree with that.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I'm hearing some really good reports about her from communities out there in her district, talking about getting stuff done, great constituency service, showing up, finding money for stuff. And you think about, ultimately, politicians typically begin to reflect the constituency they represent. And her commissioner's court precinct looks a lot more like Tom Ramsey's than it is Rodney Ellis. As far as that goes, Adrian Garcia's looks a lot more like Tom Ramsey and Briones than it does Rodney's. And so I think you're increasingly going to see Rodney and Lena isolated on this commissioner's court. The thing that I think is a fascinating question, would Briones consider taking on Lena Hidalgo for county judge at some point in time in the future?
Okay, here's the worry. Yeah.
I mean, I think the three of them, like there's definitely an alliance there. They're the three least political out of the group, right? Rodney and Lena are very much focused on these kind of big social reformation issues. They want to use county government in a different way to make amends for this or that, or to kind of restructure what it should mean for people, where the three of them, Garcia, Ramsey, and Briones, seem to be very focused on constituent services. I mean, that's all Garcia's ever really talked about. That's all Tom Ramsey's ever really talked about, partially why he was frustrated with his district getting flipped, because he couldn't provide adequate constituent services fast enough with having to learn a new precinct and things like that. And then seems to be what Briones talks about as well. And so with them kind of focused on the nuts and bolts of what that job is supposed to do, and these others focused on kind of the more aspirational view of what it's supposed to do, I think you're going to continue to see that divide.
Yeah, speaking about restructuring my bank account to put my money into other people's bank accounts is what's going on. And I want to bring up the issue of guaranteed income, because Briones supported that.
I'm surprised she did, frankly. I think that was a mistake that she'll end up regretting. And I think she probably, just because she was trying not to have a complete rift with Hidalgo. But I think you're going to see her more and more begin to say, okay, look, this county needs to start working again, because ultimately, if the county doesn't work, if your house is getting flooded, your street's not getting fixed, that will end up hurting a commissioner a lot more than hurts county judge.
Yeah, Briones is from Laredo, Texas, which is a community my family lives in, and it's been historically 80% Democratic, but it is also very conservative.
Right.
And I think, Sergio, you've got kinfolk down there, right?
Yeah.
You probably confirm that. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually my
they're conservative on several levels. And so, I was a little surprised, although she did talk about it in one candidate forum I emceed about the inequalities. But when you're paying your detention officers, what we're paying our detention officers, who are actually working on the job down there, a very dangerous job, and they're making a pittance, and you're finding $20 million or whatever to give away, essentially. I'm not saying that those folks aren't in need, but I just, and that's just kind of the old, was it proverbial, camel's nose under the tent? Where does it stop?
Well, and you go back to the source of these funds is the federal ARPA funds, right? Yeah. And so they're about to dry up, and you see Congress trying to claw back some of those. We saw that in the budget deal or the debt ceiling deal, and so that it seems like there's a panic. How much can we spend? How quickly? But the problem is you're setting up these programs that are going to expire, 2 years down the road, and then who's going to continue them? Because there's going to be a huge political fight saying, oh, these people have benefited so much from, this guaranteed income. If you won this little lottery that you get to be in, you get $500 a month, no strings attached. And of course, we get the stories of, oh, it helped so-and-so to get childcare. We don't get the stories of those who spent the money in a way that's probably not very responsible, or,
Right.
And we did have a story last week, I can't remember which outlet, about all of the fraud that has taken place.
500 billion or something.
Oh, yeah, the
it's
ARPA fund?
incredible.
Well, Holly, what you just did
You're
it.
missing. Well, Holly,
for
you're
it.
missing the point. What commissioners' constituents are getting all the money? Come on now.
I believe it's concentrated in a certain commissioner's precinct.
And
Is
you
that
can
correct?
say it. You can
What's
say
his
it.
name?
Say his
We
name.
all focused to precinct 1.
Correct.
Rodney
That's why
Ellison's
Adrian. Why she went off on Adrian.
That's right,
I don't
because-
understand because, okay, look, you
200% of the federal poverty level in those
Zip code.
zip codes,
Commissioner,
right?
yeah. The top 10
so,
zip
and
codes.
Garcia's question was, can we lower that, ceiling there to less than 200% and expand it to the poor in my precinct?
like I
Precinct
said,
People who go to
I'm
work.
not somebody who
Yeah.
does. I'm not
Precinct
somebody
2.
who deals with Adrian. Or like Adrian used to be one of my very good friends. I'm not kidding. But I swear since he done got into this position, I don't know where his head at. But in this position right here, this situation, he was right. He was right.
Yeah, he
She was wrong. I mean, this made no sense that it would all go to, and I live with it, and I am in precinct 1. That made no sense. How you gonna sit up here and say that one area instead of lowering it so it would be given out more fairly? Because my problem is exactly what you said, Holly. I don't like people using temporary money for permanent fixes. It doesn't work. This money could have been used much more wisely for things that would have affected everybody in the county. I don't even care if it would have been
Harris
upgrading the
Health,
the jail or Harris Health or something like that. So it could have been everywhere. This does not make sense to me that you're going to set up a county welfare program. I do not agree with it. Don't write me. I don't do Facebook. You ain't gonna find me, so don't look. I don't agree with this. This was really mismanaged, and it's already done.
And that's the other side of this debate. Is this an effective program for actually helping people move out of poverty?
No.
Of course not.
You know,
No,
interesting. When I was listening to Holly, I was thinking about the much bigger ongoing discussion about expanding Medicaid in Texas, in that the argument from the Republican side has always been, oh, well, this money might run out, even though it's a $9 match on every state dollar, and that people will feel entitled to that level of care. And what are state lawmakers going to do? We're going to take it away from you. And so the reasoning on the Republican side has been, well, we're just not going to do it, even though we've contributed to the funds that are being distributed nationwide, and we'll just solve our own healthcare issues.
And they ain't doing nothing. They're not doing nothing at all.
Yeah,
But you also
Yeah,
have to
let me.
look at
I ran
the
into
state
something
budget.
really
I'll talk
interesting
about that.
out in rural Texas, which is that rural hospitals are really, really struggling
Absolutely.
right now. And one of their big issues is the fact that the state didn't expand
That's
Medicaid.
right. That's right.
A bunch of people in these rural communities are really upset with Republicans about not doing that because their hospitals are really, a lot of them have closed,
They
a lot of
have.
them are in financial trouble
That's
and
right.
bankruptcy and stuff. So I think that there's one thing to talk about the ideology, and the other thing to talk about what are the practicalities in terms of how it affects people. And both parties are the same way. They talk about this sort of ivory tower ideological without looking at how does this actually affect people on the ground.
Well, go ahead.
Well, I just want to say something about the UBI thing. Briones' vote, it made sense to me only because, looking at it from her perspective, it has been done in jurisdiction after jurisdiction across this country. I don't agree with the results. The results have all largely been self-reported, where they go back and interview these people, and so I don't necessarily agree with them. But whatever, for the sake of the argument, it's been done everywhere. Also, she does have a lot of inequality in the district, so do you really want to be the lone Democrat voting against giving this to people? And, I think on its face, it's a good policy, on its face. But when you actually break it down and talk about all of the issues involved with it, it's not a good policy. I do think there's some credibility that you can lend to the argument that it does encourage work because it allows people to get childcare so that they don't have to then struggle to find a job and stay later or get a second shift or things like that. It gives you a little bit of flexibility in there.
I think it was.
But,
I think it was more political than that.
Oh, no,
I think she just wasn't ready to have the complete
You think so?
rift
Breakaway, yeah.
with Hidalgo.
So you don't think she agrees with the policy? You think? Okay.
I don't think so.
Well,
Yeah, but I still think that the policy should, if you're going to do it, but it still should have been done fairly. It wasn't
I
fair.
agree. I
Even
agree.
in Ramsey's district, he got some people broke as hell. Ramsey, his area incorporates Barrett Station and over in that area, and they're very rural, and those people need funds the same way.
And I don't agree with policy just because it doesn't work. I mean, we know that giving someone money isn't going to actually uplift them out of poverty permanently, but I think the problem is that with the 200%, you're saying that and limiting it to those 10 zip codes as well, you're saying that someone who moves to a wealthier zip code to try to get their kid in a better school and then struggles to survive because they want that access now isn't going to be considered in there because their zip code doesn't match up with what you're trying to do, but they're probably poorer than the other people and struggling even more. And so the way that they structured that, I don't necessarily agree with it. But it doesn't work. And I think at the end of the period, we're probably going to see self-reporting that says it did great, but it's not, no one's actually going to be lifted out of poverty.
And remember, Hidalgo wants to extend it to non-citizens too, which goes back to the paying the legal fees of non-citizens facing deportation out of county tax dollars.
Well,
I know that.
If you have extra money, right, and you have all this extra money, so you're thinking, well, I'm a former teacher. I worked in middle school in Laredo in the poor area. Let me just give them an injection. Let's help them out. What's wrong with that? The issue has been, well, it's not fair. Well, you can't spread it everywhere. You can if you do just a fair assessment, kind of like HISD. Why are you going to turn over 29 schools when there's 230 schools and there's poverty here, there? But the issue is long-term solution. And as you mentioned, Holly, you said, well, what happens when the money runs out? Well, there's a lot of waste in government.
Yeah,
and like these senseless bike lanes, millions of dollars. You have these horrendous bike lanes. They're horrendous in our neighborhood. Concrete things that you're going to break every axle that crashes into them. But anyway, those are $1 million, $25 million, I believe, Commissioner's Court wasted on that. You start shifting the money to these programs that help people. And that's what the philosophy behind it.
But this is why we didn't need to raise taxes last year. Also, this is exactly why we didn't need to raise county taxes. If you got this kind of money that you can give away, but you want to ask me to increase the taxes where you already done raised appraisal values through the roof, I'm glad they stopped that.
But Texas is not losing folks. Aren't they losing folks? There are actually more folks coming into Texas. You're going to have a stronger revenue base.
Well, let Bill go.
First of all, let me on this demographics. I'm writing about this week. So, the entire world, the population boom that's been going on for the last 3 centuries is over. It's over, folks. Right now, there's only 2 or 3 places in the world where women are having enough children for the population to grow in the future. You look out 20 or 30 years from now, world population tops out, and then it starts to decline after that. That's over the entire world. Some places it's worse than others. The United States is kind of in the middle of that. Inside the United States, Texas is a little better than average, but it's not what you think. The Texas population will go up by maybe 20% over the next 40 years. Okay, we were growing 20% in a couple of decades ago. So this tremendous acceleration of population growth is over. Now, some of it depends on what we do with immigration, because frankly, the United States is one of the places where we actually want to get into. So we can turn up and down the thermostat with what we do with immigration. But this idea, I was looking at the piece I'm putting out tomorrow. Metro says the Houston region is going to 10 million people by 2040. It's not even going close to 10 million people by 2040. And the city of Houston, probably its population growth is over. Probably it will never grow again inside the city of Houston. Now, but getting back to this thing about the $20 million, the question that should be asked, is there a better way to spend that money? I can come up with 1,000 better ways to spend the money, and I'll give you one. Harris Health, the situation over there at LBJ is in terrible shape.
It is.
You go spend $20 million over like that over there and really provide some real relief to the people. How about $20 million bonus to the people that work in the county jail?
Yep.
Who are getting paid for recruitment
and retention.
I could come up with 1,000 better ways to spend this money in terms of the policy result. The only reason they're spending it this way is because they don't give a damn about policy. What they care about is politics. Rodney thinks this helps him by going out. He can say, "Oh, I'm the one that got you that $500 a month.
His election's coming up.
Hey, I'm going to make a politics segue. Was it good politics for Governor Abbott to go ahead and send a couple more Greyhounds over to California loaded with immigrants.
I don't know about that because he's starting to turn into California.
I love those freedom rides.
Right. Oh
I
my
love
God.
them.
But wait, before we go, Greg, this Thursday at 2 o'clock at Planning Commission on Bagby, my neighborhood is coming there to fight again a proposed development in our community. We are at 197 signatures right now. And I live in, as you all know, 3rd Ward, Riverside Terrace to be exact. This is the 4th battle that we have had in our community in less than a year against the city of Houston. The first one, as you all know, was really publicized, was the historic district, which that community did not desire. But in order for the city to make their goal, they included a power of attorney for a man who had been dead for 4 months. Most of you all know when you die, your power of attorney dies with you. They were fully well aware of that, and yet they still counted it. The city attorney told us, oh, we don't investigate. We're like, we didn't investigate. Here's the obituary. But no, they still counted it. The second one, the conservation districts. Initially, they were going to give the power to the planning director to put them anywhere she wanted to. We knew that was going to be another way they would try to put in our area. We won that battle. The third battle, they trying to put 17 townhomes on a lot that's been in the deed restrictions since 1938. That community had to hire lock lord, and they ain't cheap. Now we have this battle in our area. We've had our deed restrictions for decades. Or the city attorney, well, y'all need to get a lawyer because I don't really think that counts. And now we are battling them again. If you care about deed restrictions and keeping your community, please come support us Thursday at 2 o'clock at the Planning Commission, because we know we have a supermajority, and the rule is if you get a supermajority in the community that the Planning Commission is supposed to vote down and not vote with the planning department. But we are really concerned about this. And this incident right here that we're dealing with is one of those where I'm telling y'all, make sure y'all pay attention to these livable places, because you may say, oh, well, we don't have to worry about that in our area. We don't qualify. Watch. I still remember that when this man came crying in the Heights. They put a building beside him, a building on the other side. His house had never flooded in 50 years. His house flooded every time it rained. And that's how they use that to change that community and get those longtime residents out of there. This is Thursday at 2 o'clock at Planning Commission on Bagby. I think it's 902 Bagby.
Okay, we're going to wrap this up. Yeah. I'm going to say, Bill King, I've met your kids. Happy Father's Day. They're great kids. Thanks. They're great kids, and I'm proud to.
Getting ready to go grill with them.
Tomorrow, Bell, you tell Lawrence I've met his kids. And you tell him Happy Father's Day.
I surely will. Thank you.
Sergio, Lita, I know.
They're going to grill outside. I'm going to wait for them to bring him back in.
I know you're a good dad. And Happy Father's Day to you. Holly, I want to have a good thought for the dad of your two. And we will all meet again. Yes. Okay? Charles, I want to thank your dad for giving you us, his part in giving you us, okay? Hey, I don't want this to be known, but I would have done this for no pay. I love just talking to you. All right?
Well, Greg, happy Father's Day to you.
Thank you.
You are an amazing dad. Yes. I've met your daughter. I mean, you are amazing dad.
Happy Father's Day.
Facebook, Happy Father's Day. Happy Juneteenth.
Happy Juneteenth.
Enjoy yourself, yes.